I was very fortunate to work in a number of plants before I was a plant manager. But what I found actually, and you have to go, this is the early to mid 90s, so you have to go back in time a little bit. But what I found was, I was at General Motors at the time, but when I went into manufacturing, there were a lot of things that were very interesting to me. First of all, people were used to being told what to do, not asked what the problem is and how can we solve it. Second of all, you had just a general feeling of lack of appreciation as workers. You got to remember, there was a lot of animosity in a lot of the plant environments between the UAW and management at that time, especially. We had white shirts and ties on, and we were and very different than what the Japanese did, but go back in that time. And so I said, there's something wrong here. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of frustration, nobody's happy. So I decided to take a different tact, which was I threw away the ties and I went and got shirts with my name on them from the plant, which was in and of itself, it sounds very simple, but it was unique. And it brought me down to, we're all the same. And then I went around every morning with a notepad of paper and checked in with all the leaders and said, what's going on? What are the issues? How can I help? Just that. It wasn't like, do this, because that's what they're used to. Mm. It was, how can I help? What issues do you have? How can I help? What do you need? I'm here to support. Again, I'm here to help you be successful, not you to make me look good. And after a while, people started believing that it was genuine, but people started believing that this person has our interest at heart and we're going to make this place better. And then people rallied together, and it started out with 34 people, I think was the department I ran first. And then all of a sudden that department started being the best performing department in the plant because the people came together and now they felt appreciated. Always say thank you, by the way. Mm. Most underused word and words in the human language, English language in this case, is thanks or shishya or don't want to got to, whatever you want to say. Mm. But is thank you, because at the core, we as humans want to feel appreciated and valued for what we do. Doesn't matter if you're president or whatever job you do. So anyway, the teams would come together, performance would get better, and then what happens? You get a chance to do it on a bigger scale because there's always a need mm-hmm. to solve problems. Mm-hmm. And so you went from, that was a kind of a assembly area, and so the biggest problem was the bottleneck of the plant, which was dirty and grungy, nobody wanted to work there. So they said, Joe, why don't you go over here? So I did, and we did the same thing. We worked hard, we worked together. I actually learned how the machines worked so I could understand better. I'm an engineer, and I would help them solve, because this was more they had more physical and technical issues than just people issues. And we started performing better and better and better, and the whole place ran better. And so you get a chance about a year later to do it on a bigger scale, and it kept happening. And the bigger roles you take on, the more disconnected you are directly from the actual people doing the work. So that's when really started investing a lot more in communication. Because again, it's a fascinating thing. In the executive world, in what we call the professional world, if people do their job, they meet their objectives, they expect to be rewarded. But we have a notion that people working in manufacturing jobs or on plant floors, if they meet their objectives or do their job, they're just doing their job. That's their job. Somehow we think the DNA is different. So I started working really hard on not only communicating what our objectives were, but celebrating, again, back to this appreciation, and investing the energy in that. And lo and behold, one time I offered to buy pizza for all the employees if we hit a milestone we never hit before. Pizza. I mean, our employees get paid pretty well. But they went for it. They actually brought in pizza boxes with a number written on it, and they got it. And I had to buy the pizza. And then I turned it into our controller to have him reimburse me, and he wouldn't, no way we're doing that. They're doing their job. You don't reward them for doing their job. So that was an interesting conversation. But when you think about it, that's what we did. So what happened was, one of the biggest breaks in my career was I was the next level up from supervisor, general supervisor in the plant. And there's an area manager, then there's a plant manager, sometimes assistant plant manager, plant manager. So I was the general supervisor, so I was the next level up out of business school. And our line started running really well. And the area manager they hated, because he was one of these guys who thought they were just bad people and they didn't want to work and they didn't care and blah, blah. And here I was in the middle, trying to really work hard and solving problems, communicating, appreciating them, thanking them, and then the company decided to move this person for the right reasons. And then the plant submitted to our corporate or regional headquarters that they recommended me going into that job. But I was only like a year and a half out of business school, and I was younger than anybody else who ever had that job. And so it came back from the headquarters, no, too young. And the workforce, on its own, there was a parking spot for this person, on its own went and made a sign with my name on it and put it up. And told the plant that if you don't give this job to this person, watch what happens. I didn't say anything. Of course, I wouldn't do anything like that. But this is back to this: when the team lifts you up, it's so much more gratifying, and it's rewarding. You never forget it. And so, lo and behold, it took like 2 months. I was interim for a couple months until they worked it out, and then I got that job. So now I was one step below a smaller plant manager. And then another company came and offered me a job to be a plant manager. I'm like, this is interesting. And the GM folks said, you're too young. And I said, okay, that's nice, thank you. And then someone really high up in GM said, wait a minute, if our competition's willing to make him a plant manager, why aren't we? We invested all this in, and then all of a sudden they said, and 6 months later, I was a plant manager. And then we have a huge strike at another plant, and the plant's in turmoil, and the people think that what we did back then is we punished people. When our plant went on strike, the first thing you did was you punished people at the other plants by laying them off because you want to send a signal to the UAW. So I came up with this crazy idea. Why don't we bring all the employees in and say, here, how about we cut a deal? We won't lay you off, even though that's the directive from above. We won't lay you off because it's humiliating to be laid off. You got to go down and get unemployment, and you got to go home and tell, why aren't you at work? Well, there's a strike somewhere else. We won't lay you off if, here's the deal. Nobody works any overtime anywhere, and all the rules we have about lines of demarcation and all these classifications that allow people to get a lot of overtime because that was their job, it's all gone during this strike, all gone. So we're all the equals. We're all going to stay employed. We're all going to work 8 hours a day, and we're all going to do everything. Let's try it for a while and see how we like it. And they didn't believe this because that's not how GM thought. That's not how we did things. And I said, trust me. And they said, okay. And we did it for several weeks. And all of a sudden, people were actually able to do all these different things they weren't allowed to do before. They could inspect their own parts. I know it sounds archaic, but it wasn't that long ago. All of a sudden, coming out of the strike, we said, why don't we let some of these things stay around and be more efficient? And all of a sudden, the plant started running a lot better. But I would say the foundation of all that wasn't the fact that we could, eliminate some classifications or other things. It was the fact that somebody saw that you're thinking about how my perspective is here, and you care about me, and I can trust that you have the right motives in mind. So when you tell me we need to do things differently, we'll try them. And if they work out, we'll keep them. And the plant ran a lot better. And then HBS did a case study on it. And it was taught at Northwestern for several years. And I came here and talked about it. But people wanted to focus on the process side of things. Those are important. But
it's all about the pizza.
It's all about the pizza. People love pizza. It's not healthy for you, but I love pizza.